You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. As always, I apologize for all of my Hebrew pronunciation. Instead of getting mad at how I say things, just laugh at how AI voices like mine mess up Hebrew pronunciation. Today's topic is the Lemba Jews. If you've never heard of them, think of this as discovering a surprising hidden chapter in the global Jewish family tree. Picture scrolling Netflix, expecting another rom-com, but stumbling across a documentary about African tribes that might actually descend from ancient Israelites. That's the Lemba, a community primarily in Zimbabwe and South Africa who, for centuries, have practiced traditions that look very Jewish. Kosher-like dietary rules, ritual slaughter, circumcision, and even avoidance of pork. They claim descent from Jewish ancestors who came to Africa long ago, blending with local populations. Their story raises fascinating questions about memory, migration, and identity. Are they really Jewish? Well, buckle up, because it's as complicated as a family reunion with too many cousins. Let's start with their origin story, which sounds like something out of an ancient travel blog. The Lemba themselves say their ancestors came from a place they call Senna. Scholars debate what Senna refers to. It could be Yemen, it could be a trading port along the Arabian coast, or maybe a lost Jewish settlement somewhere in East Africa. The story goes that their ancestors were traders who sailed down the eastern coast of Africa, eventually settling inland. Imagine Sephardic merchants hopping on ships centuries ago, only instead of ending up in Amsterdam or Istanbul, they sailed down toward Mozambique, trekked inland, and built villages. Oral tradition says they brought with them not only goods, but also religious customs. Think about it like downloading cultural apps. Even without Wi-Fi, the apps stayed on the phone. The Lemba preserved Jewish-like practices even when mainstream Judaism wasn't nearby. Their oral memory insists, we are from Israel. Now, whether that's literal Israel, Yemen, or somewhere in between is the million-dollar question. Cultural practices are the real spotlight here. The Lemba avoid pork and other non-kosher foods, which in a region where pork is common is pretty distinctive. They slaughter animals with specific rituals, similar to shechita in Jewish law. They observe male circumcision, which isn't uniquely Jewish, but carries strong religious overtones. They also have strict rules about intermarriage. They traditionally only marry within the Lemba, reminding you of Jewish endogamy rules. Imagine you're at a potluck and everyone's eating bacon, except one family who insists on chicken stew, made a very particular way. People notice. Even their burial practices, like facing certain directions, echo Jewish customs. Do these prove they're Jewish? Not necessarily. Many cultures overlap, but when you line up their rules side by side with halacha, it's eyebrow-raising. One of my favorite tidbits, the Lemba have a sacred object they call the Ngoma Lungundu, or drum that thunders. Some believe it's connected to the biblical Ark of the Covenant, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but with African beats. Genetics took the story from fascinating folklore to front-page news. In the late 1990s, researchers analyzed the Lemba's DNA. What they found sounded like something out of an Ancestry.com ad. A significant percentage of Lemba men carry genetic markers associated with the Jewish priestly line, the Kohen modal haplotype. In Jewish tradition, the kohanim descend from Aaron, brother of Moses. Amazingly, some Lemba clans showed the same Y chromosome markers found among Jewish priestly families worldwide. Picture discovering your family shares DNA with people in Brooklyn, Baghdad, and Budapest. This doesn't prove they're fully Jewish. Identity is about more than genes, but it does support their oral traditions of Middle Eastern origins. For a community long told by outsiders, nah, you're just making this up, genetic confirmation felt validating. Still, DNA isn't destiny. The Lemba are both fully African and connected to an ancient Semitic story. It's a reminder. Jewish identity can be both biological and cultural, not just one or the other. Here's where things get tricky. Mainstream Jewish communities haven't universally recognized the Lemba as halakhically Jewish. According to traditional Jewish law, Jewish status passes through the mother. The Lemba, however, trace lineage through the father. Combine that with centuries of isolation from rabbinic authorities, and you can see why rabbis debate their status. Are they descendants of Jews? Almost certainly. Are they halakhically Jewish? that's murkier. In Israel, the chief rabbinate hasn't given them the same recognition as, say, the Ethiopian Beta Israel, yet some rabbis and Jewish organizations argue they should be embraced. It's a classic Jewish debate: legal definitions versus lived traditions. The Lemba themselves often identify strongly as Jews, but others call them a lost tribe or crypto-Jews. Imagine showing up to a Passover Seder uninvited, only to find your family name on the guest list. The Lemba's story challenges the boundaries of Jewish identity in profound ways. Who gets to decide who is Jewish? Rabbis, DNA labs, or the community itself? Modern life for the Lemba is a balancing act between heritage and contemporary African society. Many Lemba practice Christianity or Islam alongside their ancestral traditions. Think of it as running dual operating systems on one computer. You can boot up Windows or Mac, depending on the situation. Some Lemba villages still maintain dietary restrictions and ritual practices, while others have blended into mainstream religions. But increasingly, global Jewish communities are reaching out. There are Lemba who've formally converted under rabbinic supervision to solidify their Jewish identity, while others insist they don't need conversion. They've always been Jewish. Younger Lemba with access to the internet now post on social media about rediscovering Judaism, connecting with communities in Israel, America, and beyond. The irony is rich. Traditions carried for centuries through oral memory are now getting TikTok explainers. Their journey shows how globalization can both complicate and enrich identity, turning oral stories into viral hashtags. The Ngoma Lungundu, their sacred drum, deserves its own moment. According to Lemba tradition, this object was built to hold the presence of God and could destroy enemies with its power. Sound familiar? That's because it sounds a lot like the biblical Ark of the Covenant. The Ngoma was kept in Zimbabwe and rediscovered by missionaries in the 20th century. Some scholars argue it's a replica of the Ark, brought by their ancestors from the Middle East. Others say it's just a ritual drum that later took on mythic importance. Either way, it illustrates how deeply the Lemba identify their traditions with Israelite heritage. Imagine if your community held onto an old family heirloom, and then historians started arguing it might be King Solomon's chalice. Whether myth or history, the Ngoma Lungundu reinforces the Lemba's claim. We've always been part of this story. It's less about proving authenticity and more about saying, we never forgot who we were. Comparisons to the Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jews, are inevitable. Both groups claim ancient Israelite origins, both preserved unique traditions, and both have been scrutinized by geneticists. But the Beta Israel were officially recognized by Israel in the 1970s, leading to massive immigration waves like Operation Moses and Operation Solomon. The Lemba, by contrast, remain largely in Africa, with only limited recognition. Why the difference? Partly because the Beta Israel had unbroken religious institutions and Hebrew script texts, while the Lemba relied on oral tradition. It's the difference between having a receipt and saying, "Trust me, I bought it." Still, scholars argue both stories highlight the Jewish diaspora's incredible diversity. If Jews can be Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, Ethiopian, Indian, and Chinese, why not Lemba? The Lemba complicate the neat categories of Jewish history, showing that Jewish identity isn't limited to synagogue pews or European shtetls. It's broader, messier, and more global than most people imagine. So what does the Lemba story teach us? First, that Judaism isn't confined to one geography or skin color. It's global, portable, and adaptable. Second, identity is multi-layered. The Lemba are African, Christian, or Muslim, and at the same time heirs to an Israelite tradition. You don't need to choose just one label, the way you don't have to pick only one streaming service, though your wallet might wish you did. Their experience mirrors the Jewish diaspora's bigger story: resilience through adaptation. They held on to identity markers even when isolated from mainstream Judaism. Their narrative also challenges the Jewish world to think bigger. Should being Jewish be about halacha, genetics, culture, or some combination? The Lemba make us wrestle with that question in real time. And let's be honest, Jews love a good debate. So in a sense, the Lemba are very Jewish already. We'll wrap this up with a thought. The Lemba Jews remind us that Jewish identity is like a playlist. It includes classics, remixes, and surprise covers. Some songs are universally recognized, others spark arguments, but together they make the soundtrack of a people. The Lemba's story expands our understanding of what it means to be Jewish, reminding us that family trees have more branches than we often realize. Whether you see them as a lost tribe, a unique African tradition, or full-fledged Jews, their resilience is inspiring. They kept rituals alive against the odds, proving memory can outlast exile, geography, and time itself. And that's a very Jewish story. Thanks for listening to Everything Jewish, 10 minutes at a time. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend who loves surprising history, and don't forget to leave us a review. It helps more people discover these hidden gems of Jewish culture. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe rethink what Jewish really means.